That's the whole key. Alright, I'm trying to set up on my Facebook, but I don't know.
So this is not your thing?
No, that's my YouTube. This is the Facebook out here. 2, 1. We live. We live. We live.
Live at 5. Can you hear us now? Can you hear me now?
We are live at 5. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Mastermind Wisdom Table Talk live at 5.
Live at 5.
And we have Larry Darnell joined us.
Hi Larry, how are you?
Great. How
I
do I do that?
but he joined.
Turn on my radio. Did I turn it on? Okay.
But he's with us.
I'm on, and now I'm live at 5.
Right. And what I'd like to do, of course, introduce my panelists here and my mentees. My name is Chris Jackson. Actually, it's Chrysoloris Chrysophilis Gustavus Jackson Sr. I am a Mastermind Wisdom coach. I have a lovely guest. We are related on our dead uncles, great uncles, other uncles' side. And I don't owe her any money. But you tell them who you are.
My name is Charlotte Jackson. I'm the organizer for Houston African American Bloggers Association. And I'm also a licensed professional counselor and licensed sex offender treatment provider.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Welcome. Larry?
Hi, my name is Larry Richardson. I'm a 25-year plus advisor with the financial services senior market. Also with the NAACP Young Adults Committee, as well as the Home Association Organization of Houston. You can contact me at area code 832-867-5038 for information concerning any of those areas. As area code 832-867-5038. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Lisa Jenkins. I am a CRFA. They start for what is it?
Stand. I start stand.
I am a star and I stand for
All right.
CRFA, Certified Retirement Financial Advisor and Health Benefits Specialist. I also am a volunteer to several organizations. I'm a volunteer to the 6th Annual Houston Creole Festival. It will be this Saturday from 9 to 10 p.m. Lots of Zydeco people will be there. And come on out. It is at Discovery Green downtown.
Absolutely. I want to say hello to some folks that have joined us. Tracy Intrepid Anderson at one time was almost my daughter. Before I married Shirley, I dated her mom.
Oh, okay.
And
Small world.
She was almost my daughter. Hi, Tracy. Carolyn, Aridia, and Roshana Shank.
Rashanik.
Thank you, Rashanik, for welcome to Mastermind Wisdom live at 5. We are going to talk. We have some great topics to talk about today. But one of the things that we do when we come live, when we have a guest, we introduce that guest, find out what that guest does, and we build some of our counseling information around what they do. So I would like for you to tell our audience what it is you do.
Well, what I do is I treat individuals who have been released from prison or who were placed on probation following a sex offense. And what we do is we do a lot of cognitive behavioral type of therapy. And I also, typically one of the stipulations when they come on probation or parole is they're not able to be around children. So I also offer chaperone training where we train the person who is their chaperone to kind of look out for at-risk situations so they are not in danger of reoffending.
Excellent, excellent.
So how does one become a chaperone?
Well, typically we require that they be on probation or parole for 2 years with minimal infractions during that period. So they're paying their dues on time, they're coming to treatment, they're following all of their stipulations, and then once someone has been identified as a potential chaperone, there is a 6-hour training course that they have to attend. Now, once they attend the training, it does not mean that they'll automatically be approved, but it is part of that process to be approved for training as a chaperone.
So a chaperone does not necessarily have to be a relative. Who is a chaperone? What?
Typically, a chaperone is a spouse or maybe an adult child or someone who is around the offender, and they are present whenever they're in at-risk situations, such as it's a family gathering and children are around. They're going out shopping. Those type of situations where there may be what's called incidental contact with children. You go to the grocery store, moms bring their kids. But if something happens to that child, if they're with their chaperone and they've been with that chaperone the whole time, the chaperone can vouch for them and say, no, he's been with me.
Okay. So how does then that individual, and certainly the chaperone, you said, they vouch for that person, that chaperone then is trained to look for places, incidents, things that could happen.
Right. For example, children come over, they want to sit in grandpa's lap. The chaperone may step in and say, you know what, that's not really a good idea. They look for those at-risk situations so that if something ever happens, that person isn't just automatically accused, or they're not put in positions where they could be accused. It's really more of a safeguard. It doesn't mean that it's gonna work every time, but the objective is to put safeguards in place so that the offender and the community at large is kept safe.
Okay. So what you're actually talking about a little bit is life lessons.
Yeah.
A lot of life lessons, because it helps not only the persons around the offender, does help the offender.
Right.
But it helps, I guess I'm looking for having that offender be mindful of things that could go wrong that would ruin their probation.
Right. Probation or parole.
Probation or parole. Is there ever a end to, I don't know the answer, is there ever an end to the probation or the offender's time when they are accused of that offense?
Really, it depends. There are some people who they may commit a sex offense, but they're never required to register.
Okay.
There are some people who have been required to register, and after a certain amount of time, there is a process to deregister. There are some people who are on parole for life. They got a life sentence, but it was life with parole. They were able to get paroled, but they're going to continue to remain on parole.
Okay. That was something that I didn't know. I thought when you are convicted, that you never get off of that. You never can get away from that sentence as a sex offender. I did not know.
And honestly, a lot of these laws, they get challenged because somebody comes along and says, wait, that's just not cool. Like, there was, they can't ever be on the internet. There with the way things are now, it's virtually impossible to not be on the internet. There are still certain type of phones that sometimes their stipulations say, well, you can't have a smartphone. That's why you still see a lot of people with flip phones.
Because we can't have it.
Can't have a smartphone.
Got it.
Okay.
But if one of their stipulations is you have to go out and get a job, and the only way to apply for certain jobs is online, then yeah, they need to be able to get online to apply for those positions.
Now, also, is that where sometimes the chaperone comes into place too, even viewing what they view through the computers?
Right, and plus, because they're on probation or parole, a lot of times their POs can go in and at any time they can say, okay, we want to see your computer
Or phone.
or phone.
So is there different levels, like if a sex offender may have a sex offense against an adult years and they got life
Right.
or parole and then they get out, they still can't be around kids? And
Right, they have to get a risk assessment, and the risk they're continuously assessed for risk. And then while they're in treatment, they are, depending on what they have, we may have to send in monthly reports or quarterly reports. And I always tell my offenders, you write your own report. I don't actually write your report. You write your report. And how you write it is by your behavior. If you come in, you do what you're supposed to do, you do your assignments, you show, willingness to change and actively engaging in the treatment process, that's the report. If you come in late, you're not paying your fees, you lie all the time, that gets written in the report. So I don't write the report, you write the report by your behavior.
You said treatment. What is the treatment?
A lot of times what we're working on is thought processes.
Thought processes.
Right.
Say it again.
Thought processes.
That's a wonderful thing, because that's what we talk about here, is our thought processes. And I think, I'm going to use this, I'm going to step back and use the word offense. Because we sometimes are offenders of our own morality. We are offenders of our own growth. We are offenders of being in a situation of settling for not doing better. Our topic here today is sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. We are offenders of not learning.
Right.
Jump right in there, panel.
We all look this way.
Yes, I think it is a process, because a lot of young, well, they may not be young, but I know in the past, of growing up in the African American community, a lot of men may have got offenses for that, like 20, 30, when they was 24, maybe dating a woman and things like that, and that carried them, and they got these long sentences. And some of them were true and some was found not to be true. But you're saying that offense never goes away. They'll always have it. If they're on parole for 20 or 30 years, it just stays there, and they always be a sex offender, and they have to register.
What really, it depends on what their sentence is. Sometimes they have to remain on the registry, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, depending on the offense and the way they may have taken a plea deal so that they never have to get on the registry. Sometimes they're placed on the registry, and there are certain criteria that have to be met, but you can get off the registry.
Explain the registry for us.
The registry just is basically you've committed a sex offense, and it's only certain information that's viewable to the public, such as, their address, things like that, the nature of the offense, but they don't put their employer on the registry. And the reason for that is Texas actually appreciates you being employed. They really want you to work. They really don't want you on public assistance. And if somebody is willing to take a risk on having somebody who's a sex offender work for them, they don't want that person getting harassed. Because if that person is working, that means they have a job. If they have a job, then they have a set amount of time that their hours are occupied. If their hours are occupied, chances are they're not out trolling the streets. We want their time to be occupied. And if that means working a 9 to 5, we want them working a 9 to 5. And we don't want the employer to disengage from that process because they're getting harassed online or getting protested outside of the storefront. That makes sense?
That makes sense. Responsibility. What is that person's responsibility? Now, not from a list of things they need to do, but have you seen that there's been a mental change in their choices about responsibility?
If they're truly engaged in the process, usually you can see that change happen pretty quickly. But it's a lot of thinking errors of there's victim stance. Oh, woe is me. This happened to me. No, you hurt somebody and you got caught. So it's not about what happened to you. At this point is what are you going to do to make it better? A lot of it is, just failure to take responsible initiative. While you just got paid and you used your money to buy weed and alcohol, you got caught, driving drunk. You weren't being responsible. You got bills to pay. You have children to take care of, but you were too busy out there having fun. So this is the situation you're in.
Sounds like you're talking about a lot of adults, not accusing any of you all of having done all of that, but responsibility. That I think we get ourselves into situations by just not following a set principle of responsibility. What do you think?
I agree. I think the responsibilities are so important in this day and age. Being on the, as I mentioned earlier, on the Homeowners Association board, obviously when you say registry, we recognize we get a lot of inquiries of people that are in the neighborhood because they're on the registry, and certain formats that we have through our associations, such as Nextdoor and things of that nature, actually points out where their locations are, which can be a pro and a con. I like to get your take on that, because there's other neighbors in the neighborhood generally have concerns when they recognize that there is an offender or someone is on the registry right around the corner and things of that nature. We used to have to address those issues when I was serving on the board a lot, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, we have to know, we have to follow, but in that area, what are some of the pros and cons in that you see?
Well, some of the pros, say something, a child disappears. If they're on the registry,
Thank you.
if they're on the registry, then you know where that person is, and you can account for their time, especially if they're on an ankle monitor, because a lot of them have a little friend on their ankle. Got to keep track of them. Some of the cons is really the people who aren't there, who have been offending, who have never been caught. So while you know that Johnny over here, he has a problem, but Jim, he may have been doing it for years and has never been held accountable.
Accountability, once again.
Absolutely. One of our topics today that we're going to be talking about, that fits into this situation, is sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And for those of us that are in the world, we go through winning and losing situations all the time. But most of the time, we count a win as a win. We count a loss as a loss. But we never count it as a learning situation. So we're going to talk about winning and losing here for a little bit. And we're going to be this is just the beginning of our series that we're going to be talking about. We're taking one of John Maxwell's books. We're going to be taking that book, and for the next couple of weeks or so, we're going to be talking about the name of the book is Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You'll Learn. But there are a lot of little topics that we're going to be jumping back and forth on, because coming up we're going to be having more and more series or mastermind groups, because I have a mastermind group that we're going to be doing based on the book.
Think and Grow Rich by
Oh.
Napoleon Hill.
Really?
Got it right here.
And why would you think that this book would be such a good topic to do a 30-day challenge on? Why would you think that? Anyway.
Okay.
Well, of course, I believe, and we prefaced this whole mastermind university on, is whatever you think about it, really what you become, or like a betterment of how you change your attitude and you change your actions. So the gentleman of Napoleon Hill apparently and obviously recognized that back in the time that he wrote this book. And when he did that, he was able to expound on how we call success in life. You know, one of the things, and I like when you read that, what our subject matter is. I read a series one time that just said that failure is not the opposite of success. It's the process of being successful. So once we recognize what success really is, there's no such thing as failure.
Wow.
It's just only been a process to get to the successful part. So we have to recognize there's no losing or no winning. When you win, it's a learning process. And if we recognize that and we use that, and this book expounds on that and utilize certain chapters in this, it benefits you and it gets you thinking in the right frame of mind to put you in a successful mode. Because even though people that quote unquote the worldly success, some people can handle that success and some people don't handle it too well. So once we get to that point of our destination, or what we consider success in life, how well do you handle it, and how well can hold on to it?
Let's talk about how we choose to handle the losses in our lives. I know y'all have never had a loss. You never lost a relationship.
Right.
You never lost a job.
Or a loved one.
Or a loved one.
Right.
You never lost your car. You've been happy to lose your kids when they go off to school.
Right.
But how do you think the average person chooses to handle loss? Lisa?
Most people cannot handle loss because nobody taught them how to handle loss. It's a process. Some people grieve through drinking alcohol. They grieve through different types of.
They cope.
They cope
And grieve.
and grieve at the same time.
Yep.
They become depressed, a lot of loss. So it's so many different ways that people handle loss.
Anybody else? Just jump right in there.
A lot of times you feed your loss. A lot of people binge eat, or sometimes they just curl into a ball and go into the fetal position. Some people cry it out. Some people go into a rage.
You said something very interesting. You said sometimes you feed the loss. Could you also feed that loss with another loss?
What?
So what I mean by that is you go into your next thing expecting to lose.
Yeah, you can go in with the expectation of failure, and if you go in with that expectation, then chances are you are going to fail.
So is that when you have people say, I never win at anything, I never win nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything happens to me is bad.
Yeah.
So is it what I'm getting at, is that a mindset that we will set ourselves up for?
It's very much a mindset, and it's a form of learned helplessness.
Ooh, I like that one. Learned helplessness. Expound on that for us.
It's kind of like when you get beaten down so much like you just let life happen to you. So rather than just kind of learn from it and say, okay, what can I do differently? You go in and you continue to do the exact same behavior that caused the initial loss.
Okay.
So you just learn to be helpless. A lot of times you see this with abuse victims. They have been let down so much that they just assume that nobody is willing to help them.
Wow.
Lisa, when you talk, make sure that you get closer to the mic for us.
Okay.
Okay. Or use your outside voice.
Chris, I got a quick one on that when we talk about loss. In fact, this happened to me in my early years of my financial services. You know, I was blessed to move quickly, and of course, Chris and I, we had the opportunity to work together in the insurance industry, and I would hire agents to come to the company and train them and develop them. And we had this one gentleman that did real well. I don't know if you might remember him, a guy by Otis. Did you remember?
I remember Otis.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh, I remember Otis.
Yeah. And we were having a good time, and we were doing some things, and Otis came into the business, and of course, you know, we were just talking and everything, and he did real well initially up front. The guy qualified for the convention. He did a lot of extraordinary things and succeeded very well. In fact, he qualified for a convention the first year he came in. And then after that year, I don't know what happened, but I ended up having to go out, and we were working together, and he ended up doing some weird things. And in the process, you know, he ended up leaving. So a year or two later, I ended up running into him, and I go, you know, hey, how you been doing? And how's the family and everything? And he was saying everything good. He had moved back, you know, out of the city. And I said, well, you know, we laughed. I said, well, what happened? What exactly happened to you that you did so well, and all of a sudden you gave up and you just didn't do well, and we ended up moving on? And this was the word he had said to me, and it was the weirdest thing I heard. He said, well, you know, I knew it couldn't last too long. He said, I knew it was just going too good. And when I heard that, I go, well, what kind of mentality and what kind of thinking is that? And my thinking has always been, it should always be a good life. You know, it should always be successful. And I recognized the difference in our thinking process perpetuated his situation to fail. It was a failing mentality in him, or in that specific situation. Now, I said that he's a failure or anything like that, but that thinking, it sets us in a path to where it's just a matter of time before we disrupt. My life has always been about consistency and staying consistent and success.
So what you're saying is losses cause us to be mentally defeated. Oh, just so profound.
and we see that every day in people that we are around that are not what we call, quote unquote, succeeding in life. You know, and that could be spiritually, physically, mentally. You know, we think financially. It's not always financial.
It's not.
Because it's not in financial. Success can be defined as an individual based on what your definition of success or what your goals are. So there's no one catch-all success story, you know, and I believe in that. So that was just a thing that came to my mind when we talked about it. You mentioned earlier about having a failure attitude from the beginning, and it's going to lead to failure. It's as simple as that. So loses causes us to be mentally defeated because of the losses we've had in our life. Agreed.
Why do you think, and I want to answer from all three of you, why do you think losses hurt so much?
I think it impacts our ego, how we view ourselves.
Okay. Larry?
I believe I think spiritually, because God has designed an innate ability in us as a human being to attain things, to accomplish things, to be moving forward. And a loss or failure is a mentality of moving backwards. It's not the forward thinking process that God has designed us to be. So a lot of times that's part of it.
And most people put loss and failure in the same sentence. They feel that if they lose at something, they fail and they can't handle failure. So it goes back to the thought process of how you're gonna think, how you're gonna motivate yourself, how you're gonna get out of something that you've done in the past, present, you know. So that's where I think of loss.
Do you think loss can build humility in you?
Yes, I think it does build humility because when you lose at something, you feel like that's go failure again. You know, you feel like you failed in everything, so you feel humiliated inside, and some with the way you feel inside, you show on the outside. Yeah, I do feel that way.
I have an example. When I played high school football for the first time, we lost every game. Every game. We lost to our bitter rival, who we would whoop every year. Um, it taught me to see and feel how the other guy feels when they lose. So for me, I learned not to rag on somebody, not to put them down, to be gracious, just as gracious in winning as I had to learn to be in losing. Because everybody wants to be on top, everybody wants to win, but nobody wants to congratulate the loser for doing their best. So it taught me how to be a lot more humble in winning, just as I had learned to be in losing. If you go, I know y'all have never lost, so, but you go through a whole season of a sport and never win a game. Sometimes they didn't even score a touchdown. It can crush you. You can choose not to come back to play that sport ever again.
Right.
Right.
And I was somewhat pretty good at it, but we didn't have a coach, a leader. We had coaches by committee. We had several coaches, but each week they would take turns being the boss, the head coach. And no, that don't work.
It really doesn't work.
But do we do that way? Do we treat our lives that way? So we have so many bosses that we can never decide on who I am or what I am. And we lose at just thinking the right way. Do you think that make any sense to you? I hope it does, because I spent a lot of time learning this.
Getting that information. Well, I like the fact that you just said a minute ago, we win, lose, and you use the best example. But it also says losing can cause us to be emotionally stuck.
Yes.
And that's just not always something physical. And back to that story I used, a person that has lost, it can humble them, but it also can emotionally affect them also. And so it has to go back into our thinking process. Getting our thinking, you said it on me, thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get the thinking out of our mind and get back around. And a lot of times it's the environment we're in.
Mm-hmm.
So when we put ourselves back into a winning environment, winning attitude, winning mentality, it gets us back to the level that we need to be successful.
And what happened with me with that particular situation, the next year they hired a coach.
Yeah, y'all.
And the coach said we were going to win.
Right.
So we chose to believe
But the coach.
what the coach said. So do you think, for you, read that for me.
Emotions are self-imposed prisons.
Do you think that your emotions can become a prison for you?
Yeah, and I want to kind of bring out the nature of the loss. Did you lose because somebody else was better, or did you lose because you gave up?
We lost because we gave up on not knowing what to do. We were not trained properly. Our emotions about winning, about doing our best, was not emphasized. We lost because we were fragmented. We didn't see each other as a team, so therefore we didn't see the value that each one of us had. And all too often, when you can't bring your emotions together, you can't bring direction together, you can't bring a solid idea of the purpose of the goal, then you will be fragmented. You can become, it can become a self-imposed prison, because now you start to think, when something similar happened, that happens the last time, that we're back in that same old rut again. Oh, we're gonna lose. So you give up sometimes before you even get to before the whistle goes off for the first play. You've already given up. Now I had to learn. We did learn that following year when we had a leader. I actually learned from that coach, because sometimes we wait on a coach to teach us stuff.
Right.
I was extremely fast, I was extremely strong, but I only weighed 145 pounds. But I was extremely strong, extremely fast. We played that second year, we played against a team that, it was our second game. We played against this team, and they were a weaker team. I knew that, we all knew that, and I ran all over them. I was a fullback. I ran all over them. Scored 3 touchdowns. That Monday, the game was on a Friday night, but we practiced on that Monday. That Monday, I was talking with the coach, and he said to me, "What had you been waiting for?" Because I knew they were weaker. So in my mind, I could run over them because they were weak. And I said to him, I was waiting on you to teach me, to train me. I didn't have to train you how to run. I didn't have to, you're faster than anybody else out here. Mm-hmm. You 145 pounds, but you're as strong as somebody that's 200 pounds. What were you waiting for? And all too often we do that. Losing will create a prison for us until we find a door that we think is open for us to do better. That's how I saw the weaker team. Do you have a comment?
So when you were talking, I just wanted to see on Hurricane, when people come out of, you see a lot of sex offenders going back to prison. Do you see a lot of them getting off the register?
I've seen very few get off the registry, but it's also something not many people know that they can do. But also, I have seen people be in treatment for 10 years and have to see me every week. And I've also seen people who, after the first year, they only have to see me every 3 months.
Okay.
So really, it really depends on them. I provide the information, it's what they do with it.
It's kind of like the football game.
Yeah.
Run this way, but run hard.
Yeah. And when they first come in, I let them know. However you decide to do this is entirely on you. Either you're going to see me every week for the next 10 years of your life, or you're going to get through what you need to do, and we can get you to a point where you maybe see me once a month, every 3 months for maintenance. Or you may stay out here for a solid month and then have to go back because you weren't sticking to the stipulations.
So what I just heard you say was, because you have had a loss, and often that loss is your biggest loss, that at that point you have a choice.
You always have a choice.
Right. And you have a list of things in those choices that you can choose to do.
Exactly. I let them know up front. However you decide to do it is entirely on you. I have no control over you. And they, well, I don't have a choice. Yeah, you have a choice. If you want to go back, you can go. There's room at the end.
But my cohorts decided to put their paperwork away, so I have to share mine with them.
Really?
He just threw you out of the bus. He threw you out.
What paperwork did you give us, sir?
What's that say right there? What that say right there?
Discuss the 3 issues. The most important person you will ever talk to is yourself. So be careful what you say to yourself.
Do you find that happening when we have a loss, even when we win? Because what we say to ourselves, the first thing that we say to ourselves is, I might be the greatest thing on earth. You know, my stuff don't smell. And I think that certainly happens a lot when, unfortunately, when we do the wrong thing and get away with it.
Yeah.
The first thing we say to ourselves is, you know, I'm good at this. And it's a shame that we get better at being bad than we get at being good. Why is that?
So do you think it's easier to do wrong than it is to do good? Or it takes the same amount of effort? Most of the time it takes the same amount of effort, don't you think?
Well, honestly, it depends on what's at stake. Is it your job? Is it your health? Is it your is it your livelihood? Because let's old example, Enron. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people who got caught up did not want to be in that situation.
Right.
But it was sink or swim.
That's true.
I think, and I'll share this part with my ideas of that. I think we're living in a different environment in this day and age right now. The biggest thing that I see that's missing in not only our lives but children's lives is understanding what we call consequences. What are the consequences of my decision? What are the consequences? We're living in a now, right now environment and world. What can I get now? What happens now? But never think more about the consequences to it. So it's back to that thinking part. What I think about, what I put myself around, the environment I put myself into, because as you just said, we do have choices for where we go, who we see, what friends we choose. But those choices that we make now, we don't see the long-term consequences of it. And because of those consequences, we don't understand the repercussions. And unfortunately, we live in such a me generation. Just what is it going to do for me? But we don't recognize what it's going to do for me and the people that are around me. Because I've always learned, once you put your finger to a drop of water, you'll see a ripple effect. So it doesn't just affect you, it affects everybody around you. And even in your situation, in your environment, in your profession, it affects lots of people.
Lots of people.
And they know nobody thinks about that. That's the consequences of it. We're just in that environment, which is why an environment or a program like what you have, Chris, and what we're doing now is so important, because it's not that we don't know better.
Right.
We just need to be reminded sometime. We need and here's what I like about Mastermind Wisdom University. It's giving us tools that we can work with. Because when we have tools, you can do a lot. You can build better. You build better lives, you build better environment, communities, people. When we're building on something, and most people don't build because we're lacking the tools to build. So we need lessons like this, we need programs like this, we need environment, people coming in with different experiences, sharing those and giving you the tool to do better, right, and make better decisions.
Speaking of that, tools, what would your advice be? And I don't give advice, but I'm asking you,
For advice.
Not just
Okay.
easy.
What would
Just
your
easy.
comments be? Well, let me first tell you why I don't give advice. When you give someone advice without them asking for your opinion, then you give them the opportunity to blame you when it goes wrong.
Sure.
Have you ever had that happen to you?
All the
Yeah.
time.
when have you ever had someone come up to you and say, whatever it was that happened, what would you do?
Well, it doesn't matter what I would do because I'm not in this situation.
That is the correct answer. It ain't
I
me.
didn't think that.
What would
Not
you
me.
do? It ain't me. That is the correct answer. And you will find yourself, you become a very smart person when you help folks to see that this is a thought or a process that you're going through that you need an answer to. We all have tribes,
Right.
friends, fellas, ladies that we hang out with. We're about to have a nice little networking tribe here in about 45 minutes. And we freely give our opinions about what somebody else would do. But we never ask them, would you like my opinion? Please choose not to be offended by my opinion. But we'll just throw it out there and give them the opportunity to blame us for a decision that they wanted, that they had the answer to, but would not choose to pay the price for that answer. We do that all the time. All the time. So,
You had something you
Yeah, you had something you wanted to say.
on your mind. Let her get it out.
Get
Speak,
it
my
out,
sister.
sister.
Speak.
put it on us.
Okay, so listen. If you ask for somebody's opinion, you better be ready for the answer. Just take it in and let it marinate.
Yeah.
And if it's not what you want to hear, don't be mad about it because you asked for the opinion.
There you go.
But that's the whole question and the whole problem. We ask someone for their opinion about the answer we already have. That is the problem. Because now I'm going to take your answer and use that. So if it don't work, I can blame you.
Which is why I always say, no, you know what you need to do. You just need to go and do it. So don't come to me because you don't want to do the right thing.
And you know how to handle it? When you say, well, I'm not really sure, but tell me, what would you do now that it's you? What would you do? And they tell you what they would do. You say, well, that's what I would do. That's exactly what I would do. What you do is
Let
what
them
I
answer
would do.
their own.
Yeah.
Let them answer their
And
own.
that gets you off the hook of the hurt because they're looking to blame somebody else for their hurt. That makes sense?
Yeah, and my guys do that all the time. I'm like, look, I didn't put you in this situation.
So, now that's a thought. You have these persons choosing to blame you for the discipline that you're asking them to now follow.
Yeah.
They'll blame you for that.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Tell us about that.
So I have to write the reports, but of course they give me the material, and we show them, okay, this is your report. Well, you didn't have to tell them all that. Is this the behavior you engaged in? Is this what you did? So why would I not tell them what you did? Because you did it.
Right. So what I heard you say was they're choosing not to be responsible for their own information. The stuff that they've written down, they're choosing not to take responsibility for.
Exactly, and it's really cool because we're in a group setting most of the time, and usually I really don't have to do a whole lot of work because the guys, they'll just take over especially if one of the guys does something like really just insane, like, say, I'm gonna sit on the porch and drink beer, and my parole officer comes up. Okay, why were you sitting on the porch drinking beer? And how did you even get the beer? What, you were at the liquor store and you have it on an ankle bracelet? Well, why did you think your parole officer would not know that you went to the liquor store?
Right.
You have on an ankle monitor, sir. What were you thinking?
Is this thing on? Is this working?
And so I just sit back and they'll just have at it with them and be like, okay, we'll let y'all do that.
I want us to talk a little bit. Well, first of all, we're coming up on our first hour, and I'm going to ask my guests and my mentees. I'd love to make you a mastermind mentee as well, because you're already doing some of the good stuff. But I'm going to ask you guys again to introduce yourselves to our audience. Let me say hello to Ann and Mary and my love and somebody else. Audrey. Hey, Audrey. Audrey's a church member. Okay. I want you guys to introduce yourselves one more time. Tell us what you do. If you have something special going on, give a name and number of how you can get contacted. But let's start with you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Jackson.
What's your name again?
Charlotte Jackson.
You in the kin to Chrysalis Chrysopolis or Staples Jackson?
No relation.